Here's what happened. Mario, when we first met, it felt like we were in different chapters of life. So for you in this current chapter of life, what is the mission that you're on?
What a fantastic question. So, the mission that I would say that I'm currently on is to share my real story and my struggles in a way that can serve dadpreneurs and help them level up to become the men that their families deserve.
And for you, like what have been some myths that you've realized when it comes to dadpreneurship?
Oh man. So I think like one of the first ones that I personally have experienced and that I see a lot with my clients is you can't be a great dad, husband, and entrepreneur. Because when people think about being an entrepreneur, you think about burnout, right? You think about 80 plus hours a week, like just on the grind. And then you tell yourself this, like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to take care of myself and, take care of my personal health routines and do all of these other things. But that's a myth. It's just not true. What's true is you can make time for the things that matter to you. And if it matters to you, you're going to make time for it. So that's where it really comes down to having the right system, having the right mindset, and also like giving yourself a lot of grace that you're not going to be perfect through the process.
I've been trying to figure out where the hell this or thinking keeps coming up, like the source of it rather than and. What's your take on that for why someone can get caught up in the either or rather than the and?
I don't know. I don't know if I have like a perfect answer for that, but I think it's probably just learned. Like at a certain point in time from, our parents, from our providers or caregivers, it's just like a scarcity type of mindset. Like you can either just have this or that. You can, if you dedicate in one area, that takes away from others. And while that's, true to some degree, like really what I believe in is high performance. I believe it's important not just to be good in one area of your life, that it's really important to be good in the main buckets and the main areas that matter. And you can do that. There's people that are doing that. And it just requires a little bit of unlearning of some of the ways that you've thought about and learned as you're growing up, and kind of learning from other people. That's at least been my journey so far. Like, I'm curious, what do you think? Where do you think it comes from?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure it out. I mean, it resonates with like it's something learned all the way up, but I think it's like the thought of, I feel like with certain thoughts that can come up, it can be all consuming in our minds, and then that moves into the rest of the body. And so
Mm,
it's all of a sudden you're not seeing the other option there, which is the and. It's just there's one sole focus, which is usually a negative experience where it just completely consumes you. So that's where I feel you get into the either or of like, you got to solve this thing before anything else can like move forward in life. That kind of comes up, if that makes sense.
oh, definitely. Yeah. Because I think it's like your brain or your mind is just trying to keep you safe, right?
Yeah.
It's just trying to keep you in your comfort zone, keep you safe, keep you alive, conserve energy. And so maybe when it's, looking at different options, it's going to choose the option that's going to try and protect you. I like that take.
Yeah, and then becomes all consuming, like in those moments. Um, yeah, I guess what were a few things that you had to unlearn yourself going through this journey?
Man, um, I think that first one is the main one that um, you can actually be good in these different areas. I think another like big one that I've just been trying to unlearn is that like I used to tell myself and used to believe that I need to achieve in order to be loved. I need to achieve in order to feel a certain way. And reflecting on that, that's something that has actually helped me accomplish a lot of things. It's that drive that I have is something that led me to take on big races and do Ironmans and do ultras and start my podcast and start my business. But eventually you reach a point where you realize that the things that you're achieving aren't the things that are going to fulfill you. And, it took me a while to realize like when it comes to like a race, it's not about the race, it's about the person you become along the way. Right. And it's all about who you become in the pursuit of what you're trying to achieve, that is ultimately what it's all about. And so it's not necessarily about achievement. For me, like a lot of it is about alignment. And once you really make that shift, you're able to show up as yourself. You're able to be real. You're able to be authentic. And then you're able to like give that back and serve others in a way more meaningful way.
Yeah. Was there like a moment or like, is there a moment that comes up for you where that shift, you really remembered noticing that shift from not going to the achiever mode? Cause I think about that in my own life of perfection. Like I thought I had to
Yeah.
be perfect for everyone, and that's what I equated love to. And so, yeah, is there a moment that sticks in your mind that comes up with moving from achiever to more just realizing it's part of the process and who you become?
100%. So
Okay.
it's 2017. I'm training for my first Ironman. And I set this goal like in January of 2017. I'm like, I want to do an Ironman to prove to myself, if I can do that, then I can do anything. Okay. So I set out on this goal. I get my training plan. It's a 30-week training plan. I start training. And along the way, like there's lots of different obstacles that pop up. I ended up getting like IT band syndrome because I was training really hard and I didn't really like know the exact structures of endurance training. So I was set back for, 3 to 4 weeks, like not being able to run. I ended up getting a pretty bad eye infection in my eyes from like swimming with my contacts. I had a lot of moments where, I was engaged at the time. And so there's a lot of moments where I just felt guilty for training, and I kind of had to find and learn that balance. And then I get to the race, and after a couple of years, like leading up to it, months of training, I go through the race. The race is hard. There's lots of different moments, and I push through. I cross the finish line. I've got my whole family there. It's like in my hometown, friends and family, 20, 30 people there. And it felt amazing to cross that finish line in my hometown in front of my whole family. But like a few minutes after that, after like all of that settled, I noticed I just started thinking, oh, what do I have to do tomorrow for work? All right, how am I going to get my bike home from the race? All right, am I going to head home tonight or tomorrow morning? Like, what am I having for dinner? Like, okay, what are the projects that I need to do at work? And it was really interesting because I had trained for this race for years and months. And then just a couple of minutes after completing it, my mind already just starts going to what's next? What's the next achievement? And so that was one of the first moments where I realized, like, all right, it isn't about a race. It's about the person you become along the way. And then that lesson has just shown up time and time and time again as I've gone after other pursuits in my business, my podcast. And it is just like a core principle that everybody talks about. It's all about the journey. And I think when somebody else says that, you say, yeah, like that makes sense, or it might be true for them, but like it's different for me. And so I feel like everybody has to kind of reach that conclusion on their own through their own life experience to really let that sink in. And even as I say that, I still have to like train myself and remember, like, what we're doing right now is awesome. We're in this process of like both building our businesses and helping grow this podcast. That's the process. This is amazing. Like, we get to do this. And what an amazing opportunity that we have. So I don't know, even though I realize it, I still need to remind myself of it. I'm curious for you though, like how has that shown up for you, and does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, it does. I mean, those moments of trying to remember that it's about taking it one day at a time has been really helpful. And I know we both vibe on this idea of celebrating small wins. I go back to
Yes.
like small wins, they lead to the big wins, and being able to be present in the moment. My mind would pinball a lot. So I get into like pinball thoughts and think about always future and like the dreams and the vision. And I'm a planner, like I could plan it out, write the vision, get fired up with it, think it's already happened. So I don't actually do anything about it. I just stay stuck where I am. So it was really having to remember that you got to take it one day at a time. And yes, you have that vision, but that's not going to bring the excitement and the joy if you're all of a sudden feeling miserable and stuck where you're at. and not making any progress at all. So remembering to put in the actual work and the reps to do that. So that's how I resonate with that side of it.
Oh, I love that. Like the small wins, that's just what I'm all about. Like I really try and find the wins, find the gratitude every day. I'm curious, are there any specific practices or things that you like to do to like really embrace that and like live that out?
Yeah, well, how I share it is like doing an actual physical movement that honors the celebration. So for me, like at first with a win, I would do something like on video. I'm basically just like raising my arm like this, like yeah, like that's my win,
Yes.
you know. And for me as a man, that's something else that I think really came up was the fear that if I actually shared, like if I actually showed the amount of celebration and that like feeling like scoring a touchdown or scoring a goal, that would actually be scary for other people to witness that. And so I would close off from that connection whenever I'd have a win where you have that immediate like, oh, like urge of excitement. And then
Yeah.
you dial it back down. And so really now I get to a point where I'm celebrating. I literally do like a double tap my shoulder, raise my arms up and go like, yeah, like as if it's like scoring a touchdown or a goal for something small. Like even if it's just being outside for a certain amount of hours or, getting like a quick workout in for like a push up or something, just those small things to build up. And that reminds the body that I want more of this. And so then it helps when it comes to those days where you don't feel like showing up. The body's like, oh, wait, no, you like this stuff. Like, let's lean it.
I love that so much. And I think one thing that's really cool there is that you get your body involved. I don't think I get my body involved as much, but like when you're celebrating a win, right? When you cross a finish line, when you score the goal, throw the touchdown, whatever, it is physical. And I got to tell you this, this is super cool. So I was talking to one of my clients about like celebrating this exact thing, like celebrating the progress and really just celebrate the progress of catching like your negative self-talk. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be really weird, but just like try this out. Anytime you catch yourself spiraling, say like, that's my inner critic, and then celebrate it and just say like, yes. So then today we were talking about that. This was 2 days ago. Today I got a text from one of my clients and all he said was, yes, with 2 exclamation points and 2 fists. And I said, haha, what was this in reference to? I don't know if you tried to add an image or something, but it didn't load. He goes, it's me cheering for myself. And I'm just like, yes.
Yeah.
I just love that so much. I think that's a great practice. So thanks for sharing that with me. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm curious even more. So for the work that you're doing now, what do I not know about you that would make sense for why you're so passionate about this work?
The reason why I'm so passionate about this work and why I feel like this is my purpose is because it came out of one of the hardest things that I've ever had to experience. So a lot of times when we face adversity, like we don't understand it. For me, started my business a couple of years ago, worked on the side while I was working at an ed tech company, knew I wanted to have a podcast, knew I wanted to coach people, knew I wanted to speak on stages, didn't exactly know how I was going to make it happen, but I just got started. About a year and a half ago, made the decision to leave my full-time job, go out on my own and really like go for it. And early on, like I had some like big wins and I had some big success. And eventually I reached that point in your journey where you realize like the thing that you were chasing wasn't actually going to be the thing that you thought would fulfill you. And it started me on this journey of being like, what is this really all about? And went through a couple of months where I just really struggled with my mental health. I felt isolated. I felt alone. I'm a team sports guy. I was always leading teams, and now I'm a solopreneur doing it on my own. The early stages, you don't have that clarity. Like, who is my ideal client? How exactly am I going to help them? How am I going to scale from individual coaching and group coaching and live events? It's hard when you're doing it by yourself. And I really struggled. And it was because of those struggles that I started to really rely a lot more on my faith and started to connect with more people and talk about some of the things that I was struggling with. I ended up having a coach that came into my life, and I hired her to help me to understand kind of like my inner dialogue and like some negative thinking patterns and how that was holding me back. I hired another coach and a program to kind of give me structure and help me become more productive. Joined a community to like just solve that isolation problem. And so it was because of the struggles that I had that I reached out and kind of found all of these different solutions. And I never really want anybody to go through the same struggles that I did. And that's what I realized is I had to go through that in order to build empathy and to really be able to connect with guys who are just like me, very driven, very highly motivated. You have big dreams, you have big goals, but you're struggling. And a lot of times people struggle in silence. They try and fight these battles alone. And I don't want anybody to have to go through that. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why I create content all the time talking about the process of like understanding what's holding you back. And that's why I love to do this.
Yeah. I so resonate with that, of just that journey that you go on, of really being able, all that pain that can come up along the way.
Yeah.
In the moment you don't realize it, but like looking back, it's like, oh yeah, that's what then allows me to be able to really connect on a truly deep level with other people. It's one of those mediums to go about doing that. Like with those moments. Oh yeah.
Can I say one thing? Like that's why you and I are here right now, because you went through your own experience of burnout. And that was really painful for you. That was really hard. But because you went through that, you now feel this mission to make burnout extinct. And people are resonating with it. People are reaching out to you. You've got this platform. And that's why I just like really respect and admire what you're doing and how you're going about it, because you've just been so like authentic from your very early like episodes, just talking about your struggles. And I think in a weird way, like that's what draws people into you. That's what connects us as humans. It's not just the success and the achievements and all of that. It's the like, I'm a real person. This is my story. And so I just want to share that and just say, like, I see you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm curious too for you, because it came up for me where it is a struggle to like show up in that way, and actually at first it can feel like an awkward giraffe, like you're trying to like figure this shit out of like how the hell do I share me? So I'm wondering, like there's two lines I want to jump into, but first this one is for you. Yeah, how was that journey of, because I believe also for you show up genuinely in how you share the journey in the process. I feel that, it's just an energy. It's, you feel the energy. And so for you, what's that journey been like for that process of showing up as you, you can take authenticity as it because you're just showing up as you, but like, what's it like to just show up with others? If that could be family, to friends, to how you're showing up online. What's that like for you?
I think it's something that I'm still figuring out, because I have no problem just being me. If we're just hanging out in person, if we're going for a run together, if we're sitting in the sauna, if we're getting coffee, I have no problem doing that. I'm still figuring out how to do that online in a way that feels aligned. But really what I try and do is just share my experience in a way that I hope can resonate and connect with other people. I think the platform that you choose to do that really does help. That's where I really liked having my podcast for a long time, is just being able to share in an open format. I would just come into my studio, and a lot of times I would just close my eyes and just like speak from the heart, and just like whatever comes up is what comes out. And yeah, I think it's just something that I'm trying to figure out. I don't think I have a great answer for that. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's similar. It's just, it's that like continuous process. Like it's the online, that's the difficulty that can come up, is like having to think you have to be on or be this like performance, that can come out of you. And I've come recently, actually just happened like literally a few days ago. And I was like blown away. I was like, oh shit, this just happened. But actually physically being able to connect with the heart and then express the words out that way. So it's like it's really subtle, and it's hard to, I still have to figure out the words for how to like express it, but you can be in the mind and talking, and it's like more of like a higher, like lighter level up in the mind. But then there's more of like a solid foundation rock in the heart when you express your words.
I like that. And it actually made me think about something. So one of the things that I did after I had kind of gone through my own struggles, and earlier this year I was reflecting on it, I actually wrote a couple of poems. Dude. And like, I don't know, when you think about me, you may not think of me as like a poet. You may not think, oh, this guy's just like writing poems. But it felt so good to like take your journey, your story, your struggles, and kind of like use it in a creative way. So right now, I haven't like shared any of those yet, but it's something that I'm going to do. I was actually just at a men's group this past weekend, and I shared one with the group, and the guys were like, "Wow, like you need to share that." So I don't know. I think it's really just aligned with like what you're talking about. It's just trying to share and speak from the heart, and good things happen when you come from that place rather than up here.
Yeah, I was like, so all of a sudden you got to get on that open mic for poetry.
I don't know if I'll do that.
Yeah, I feel you. And like the other way that it could be easier for someone to understand it is like saying your name, actually repeating your name. Like if I were to be like, hey, my name is Robert David, or RD, like that actually is a truth. And then I notice the connection closer to the stomach or the gut. And then when I say like, hey, my name is Jeff, like I can immediately, because it's a lie to myself, notice it up in my head. So that can help someone if they're like, I don't know what the hell, like how the hell to connect to the heart. That's like a pretty easier, simpler way to get into it.
I love that.
Yeah. And then I was going to asking for support, going back to that, circling back, where like what was going on for you in that moment of like actually reaching out in that process? Because I know it can be difficult if someone is like in isolation right now and they're, silently suffering. Like, how would someone start that process of reaching out and asking for support?
What a great question. I think that like the place to start is just start with somebody who you feel safe with, and start by sharing it with them. The person that I always start with is my wife, Emily. And I remember like the first time that I opened up to her, we were just like eating lunch, just eating Oreos. Ironically, we were just eating lunch, eating Oreos. And I was just like, I could feel myself wanting to tell her that I was struggling, and I didn't necessarily know how to do it, but I just said like, can I just share something with you? Like, I'm feeling isolated right now. I'm feeling alone. I don't necessarily know what's going on, but I just started with, can I just share something with you? And I think that that's just a good intro. It's like a bridge to just say whatever needs to be said. So I think that has been, like the path for me, is just starting with my wife and just sharing what's going on with her. Because a lot of times myself, and I think a lot of guys, try and solve things on their own, and then clearly you're off, and partner, your spouse, family can tell something's off, but you're not really sharing it. So that has been one really good thing for me. What about you? Is there anything that you feel like helps?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I go back similar with my partner. It's just being able to say like, hey, can I talk to you about something? It's like just like simple, kind of like you don't have to all of a sudden just blurt it all out right at once. Like that could be something you really want to do, is just like just word vomit it all.
Yeah.
But just to first like intro it and help someone to prepare. But it is go back to trust, like someone that you feel you can trust, that feels safe, being able to express it and start there. And then from there, you can build out who those people are in your life. Yeah. So
okay. Yeah. So it sounds like it's a similar thing. Yeah. I think another thing for me that really helped, like a practice that I started, was journaling. I did like some morning journals and morning gratitude before that, but I'd never had a journal to just share like what was going on. But when I was really struggling, that was one of the most beneficial things that I could do to just manage and process my emotions, just by the easiest way to do it. And what worked for me was just by starting by the date, like write down the date and the time and just word vomit whatever like you're thinking. Hey, just got done with this podcast with RD, struggling, not sure like what's going on, just word vomit like whatever's coming up. I found that was like another thing that just helped me get it out of my head and just out on paper, because once it's out on paper, then you can almost separate yourself from it and analyze it as if it's somebody else who is going through it. And just that simple practice of opening up to somebody and then journaling and getting it out there. You don't even need to share that with anybody. That's just for you. That can also be another thing that can be helpful as a way to just start to get some help in navigating that.
I think of emotional management. I know you've talked about that before, where's the difference between that and time management. How has that impacted your own journey and then the people that you're working with? What do you notice when it comes to focusing on emotional management, what that does for people?
Yeah. So I think just first of all, like whenever you're struggling, and a lot of times you're struggling emotionally, that leads you to procrastinate. And then you procrastinate, you get a certain result. So then you're trying to solve this procrastination problem. You're just not getting as much done. So what a lot of people tell you is like, you just need more discipline. You need more time management. But the truth is that time management can help with some people, but sometimes it actually makes it worse, because you're not solving the root problem. The root problem is you're having a hard time managing your emotions and you're stuck in a negative thought spiral. And so what I like to look at is, let's look at the time that you are using. How well are you spending that time in a state where you're present, where you're calm, where you're in a state of gratitude? If you're not using that existing time in a calm, present state, then that's probably like where we should start. And so what you want to start to do is like start to look at throughout the day, from the morning, from the time that you wake up to the time that you go to bed, what are those moments or those times when you start to get thrown off, either because of a negative thinking pattern, because you get triggered by something, and really work on the skill of managing your emotions in those moments, so that the things that used to throw you off for hours or days don't throw you off as much. Journaling's one good way to do that. Breathing, just coming back to the present moment. Mindfulness is another really good example of that. And I think that that's actually the skill that a lot of entrepreneurs, highly driven people need to develop, even more so than time management. It's just regulating and managing your emotions.
Yeah. What do you think about that type of person? Like why that's so important for them? Like the driven and like push it. Like I feel like there's more to that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm one of them. Like
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways, like what is it that drives you is a good question. And why do you want to be perceived in that way? I think for me, I really wanted to be seen in a certain way. I wanted to be seen as the person that has it all together. I wanted to be seen as it's just kind of like that perfectionist, like high achiever identity. But the underlying question is like, what is driving that? Are you going to that because you want to be seen in a certain way? Like, are you doing it for love, or are you doing it from a place of love? And to me, like, I really want to be rooted in purpose, in serving others. And so it's less about my own achievements, about my own journey, and more about how can I help other people through their journey. I think that's one of the coolest shifts that you can make, is start to consider it from that lens.
Oh yeah. I resonate with how I connect to that is also coming at it from a place of fun and explorer, like of like, oh, what could be
Oh,
possible?
I
Like
love that.
and it's hard to like, I mean, because when you're in it and in the shit, you're just like, fuck this. Like I want to just get through this day and like
Yeah.
keep grinding. So I'm curious with you having with your kids, like how's that reconnection happen for you of connecting back to your own fun and inner kid and like silliness and goofiness?
What a fantastic question, because this is another one of those myths that I think I've had to relearn, because so many people tell you, and I told myself this too, business is a grind. Like, it's going to suck. It If you really believe that, if you really believe business is a grind and it's going to suck, that belief is going to lead to the thoughts that you're going to have on a daily basis, which is going to lead to the emotions and all of that. And so I really believed that for a long time. But I started to make a shift to where I don't want to believe that business is a grind. I want to believe that business is an adventure. When you believe that it's an adventure, you expect things to go wrong. You expect that there's going to be ups and downs, but that's kind of the whole point of going on an adventure, is like you're just kind of approaching it from that curious lens. Let's see where this goes. Let's see what happens. And I just feel like making that shift into business as an adventure has been a really good shift for me, because that's where you have that curiosity. That's where you have that play. And that's where like really good things happen. And yeah, you asked about my daughters. My daughters are 4.5 and 2.5. And just watching them explore the world is so fascinating. They just get so interested in little ants and bugs and things on the way to daycare. And they're just like, bending over and exploring it. And they're just all about like play. And I think that that's been one of the things that I've realized is through the conditioning of achievement and results and goals, you almost feel like you're doing it for that. But at the core of it, like, these things are supposed to be fun. And when you approach it from that sense of play, it can just be so much more enjoyable as whatever it is that you're doing. I know that that's one thing that you always try and do is like, and we've connected over James Clear. How can I make this fun? How can I make this easy? How can I make this interesting? Asking that will get you to a much better outcome than like, how can I just grind this out?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's like that constant improvement. Yeah, focusing on that improvement and that growth, but in the way, the lens of like trying to make the whole situation better for you is how I look at that.
Yeah.
And then for you, what's been some of the greatest joys of being a dad to your daughters?
Just the unconditional love that I feel for them and that they give to me. It's just an unconditional love that is like just so special and so profound. I think it's also just being very present. It just forces you to be present. They're not thinking about the future. They're not thinking about the past. They're just present. And that's like one of the most important things that I think I need in my life is just being present and just being where my feet are. And my girls are the perfect example of that. And I think that like my girls just love the simple things. They just love going to the library. They love when we all go to the coffee shop together. And it's just simple. It's the present moment, and there's nothing that's better than that.
Yeah. And for you, being a dad, what have been some of those surprising truths that you've realized about yourself?
It's a good question. I think it's a lot of the things because it like thinking about my daughters in their younger age kind of made me think about myself. And I even asked my parents this, like, what was I like as a kid? I had my parents send me a couple of pictures of myself when I was younger, and I had them just describe me as a kid. And it was, I was very playful. I was energetic. I was curious. I was observative. Um, and if you were to ask me, like, how would you describe who I am now? I probably wouldn't use those adjectives right away. And so I think it's been kind of cool to watch my daughters and then put myself as a kid in their situations and really think about, like, who am I as a kid? Who was I as a kid? And really trying to connect to that a little bit more. And it's brought up that I just need to be a little bit more playful with this, especially in this environment that is business and podcasting and things where a lot of the environment and the talk is around it being like a grind. And so I think that that's probably like the biggest thing is just, I was a pretty playful, active, curious kid. And why can't I, how can I show up as that a little bit more now as an adult?
Yeah, that's such a powerful insight. And it comes back to like looking at how many things are going on in your life. I
Mm-hmm.
think about what does that, because I don't have kids.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like energetically, like how is that for like, okay, you have the work that you're doing, podcast, could be posting on social media, then you're hanging out with your partner, your kids. Like, how is that energy moved for you through all those different things? Like, what's that process like? Like, what's going on inside?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. It's still like it's hard to navigate that sometimes, especially in this stage where I'm doing everything myself right now. Um, but the the biggest thing that I like to try and remind myself of is these things are all like connected and they actually like make each other better. It's not like one thing pulls away from the other. Being a better dad makes me a better business owner. Like when I have a good day coaching my clients and, being productive, it allows me to be more present and just like forget about that when I'm with my girls. And then, the way that I show up for Emily, for my wife, like that actually, supports all of the other areas. So it's just a natural like flow. I like to try and think about it in terms of a work-life harmony, not just like a work-life balance, because I think that's a big struggle for a lot of people. Like, how am I supposed to have balance when I'm supposed to spend this number of hours on my career, on my business? And so it's really more so about, are you aligned with the things that you're doing, and how can you think about it in a way to where they really like work together in a harmonious way?
Yeah. I resonate with that interconnectivity, like how, like that's so powerful. And I don't want to like just gloss it over. Like it's reaffirming that each of these parts of your life support each other
Yes.
and can act like a recharge for, let's say, work. You're hanging out with your family, like that can recharge you from the work and the grind that you've been in. And then vice versa for just having those moments of variety in the journey. And I think back to burnout. Like with burnout, I always talk about how burnout, it's interconnected with all areas of life. And so everything can affect burnout. You can have burnout in different parts of your own life. If that's, work has been the big focus, but it could be in relationships, could be family life. And it does go back to like all roads lead to burnout if you're not recognizing the signals in your body. Like you're going to end up to that
Mm,
one-way ticket of burnout. But also your body is able to handle a certain amount of capacity of the anxiety and the overwhelm and the stress. That's what makes the body so powerful and like badass. So I really love how you frame that of like, it is all interconnected and that harmony. It reminds me of like a river, like it all just like flows.
Oh, yes. One
Yeah.
of my favorite songs is called Banks, and it talks about like the flow of a river and the way that like the riverbank kind of guides and supports the river as it moves along. And um it's just, my wife and I have talked about how that's kind of how we want to show up as parents. Like we want to help like support the natural flow of the river, not in an overbearing way, but in a supportive way. So I like that you phrased it that way. That's cool.
Yeah. That's so cool what you just said too. I really like that. For you, when do you notice in your own life that you're moving towards like that chronic exhaustion or that fatigue? Like, what are some of the signals that you start to recognize within yourself when you're headed in that direction?
Yeah, I think some of the most important signals to look for is just being like really overwhelmed, to then getting to the point where you resent what you're doing, or you like resent or get angry about the situation that you're in. That to me is a signal like, whoa, I need to take a step back and I need to recharge right now. Because when I'm showing up as my best, I love what I do. But when you aren't managing your energy, when you aren't sleeping the best, when you aren't like really showing up the way that you need to, it can get overwhelming, and then it can lead to that spiral. And so I would say that those are kind of like the main things to look out for.
And then for you, what are some ways when you kind of step back and like go through that like what's that process like for you of what you do?
Key thing is get outside, go for a walk. I have certain songs that I listen to that are just short, ambient, a lot of worship songs that just like restore and rejuvenate my soul. I think exercise is a big one. Just going for like 20 minutes of exercise. Prayer is really good. Meditation, journaling, any of those things. But probably like the number one thing is just go outside and go for a walk.
Yeah. Like I'm thinking back to um did that time shrink for, let's say at the beginning when you get hit with that, like how was that process like to recognize that that was your signal, that like, okay, when this stuff's coming up, I've got to make a change? Like did that start to shrink even more as you were able to get that awareness?
What do you mean by like shrink?
Like when it comes to like your amount of time that you're not listening to your body and listening to those signals, because I know for me, like what caused me to hit burnout was I ignored those signals and
Oh,
just kind of kept going and kept moving. And so I'm
yeah.
curious for you if you've noticed changes as you've gotten more aware of that situation.
Well, the interesting thing about burnout for me as an entrepreneur is like my foundation and the way that I approach it is actually rooted in the way that I show up as an endurance athlete and I train for a race. Because a lot of people think when you're training for an Ironman or an ultra that you're like going super hard all the time. The truth is actually the opposite. You always have at least 1 or 2 days that are rest days. And when you're training, 80% of your training is like lower intensity. So you're going pretty slow. It's just the lower intensity that's like stacked over time that ultimately leads you to do a really big accomplishment and a really big feat. And so I've always kind of tried to root the way that I show up in entrepreneurship in the same way. Lower intensity, more focused on consistency over intensity, having like a rest day or having a break, and having those habits and those rituals that kind of just naturally restore your soul and restore your energy on a daily, a weekly, and I would say at least like a quarterly basis as well. Because I try and take some time every quarter to just reflect on the previous quarter, like get out of the office, go into the woods, like go outside, go shoot. Like I would do this sometimes when I'm like playing basketball, like just shooting hoops, like just reflecting. And that's always how I've kind of tried to approach it, is from that lens. So I don't know, there's just a lot of like really cool parallels there between the endurance training and the entrepreneurship pursuit.
Yeah, when expanding on more of the lower intensity, like I feel like someone could look at it of like you want to go full tilt all the time. Like you want super intense. You think that's the way things are supposed to be. So if someone has that type of mindset, like how do you share with them this other avenue and this other path they can go where it's actually the low intensity over a longer period of time to sustain that? Like how do you help someone switch that?
I would start by asking them, or you, if you're listening, like, how is that going for you? What parts of it are working for you and what parts of it are not working for you? Because it doesn't mean like, it's not like an A or B. There's like a good mix there, right? Like we talked about. What parts of it are working for you and what parts are not working? Maybe you're telling yourself that like you can go really hard for a couple of days and then you just like crash out like the rest of the week, or you find yourself in a season where you really are like dedicated, for these next couple of weeks or months. You've got to find the thing that works for you, and you got to recognize the season that you're in, I think can be really helpful. And you also want to have a perspective of how long do you want to be playing this game, and how long is your horizon that you're looking at, because you really do want to be like locked in on a daily basis, but you also want to find a way to zoom out and just have a much longer perspective. Like, can I do what I'm doing today for a decade? If the answer is no, and you're going to be playing the game for a long time, like maybe there's some good reflection that can happen there. Clearly there's different seasons to things. Like you're in a season of like really like getting this thing off the ground and helping it grow. So that's like a more intense season than somebody who might be in a different season. So I would say, how's that going for you? What's working? What's not working? What kind of a season are you in? And how long are you going to play this game to kind of have that short-term versus long-term focus?
Yeah. And I go, because this is personally what I deal with. I deal with the all or nothing approach a lot of times, where that's been over the years having to work on that.
Oh
So I'm wondering
yeah.
if you have any like other strategies to navigate where someone may get in that mindset of like they have to throw everything out and start from scratch. And
Oh man.
like
I'm like I'm so interested in that. Yeah, because the all or nothing mentality is a negative thought pattern that will sabotage you. It's like, I'm either going to go to the gym for 2 hours or I'm not going to go at all. I completely disagree with that. Really what you want to think about, this is why the small wins are so important. How can you make this part of your lifestyle? When you make something part of your lifestyle, it's something that you're going to stick with for a decade. So with anything that you're doing, I always try and look at what's working, what's going well. Let's do more of that. What's not working? Let's find some adjustments there. And let's find that balance, that sustainable, like long-term balance, because that's ultimately the thing that's going to get you the result that you want. It's the thing that you're able to do consistently in a healthy way over the long term.
Yeah. Yes. I vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's like something that we may have left off the table right now? Like something that you feel would be really important to talk about that we haven't talked about yet relating to all this stuff so far. Is there anything we left off?
Yeah, I think just like the idea of like the perspective that you have. And for me, my whole journey has been about finding that perspective that works for me. And what works for me is just really relying on my faith. And I know that may not be the case for everybody, but eventually you want to make sure that you have a perspective that resonates with you. Some people are spiritual, some people are religious. I think just thinking about your perspective on the way that you see things and the beliefs that you have really just filters everything on a daily basis. So like there's lots of different ways to get that big perspective. Even just like going outside and looking at the stars, that can give you this perspective of like, wow, there's a lot out there. Like the universe is a lot bigger than me and like what my problems and what I'm looking at. Go outside in nature, look at how amazing and how big and how many trees there are. Like when you go to the Grand Canyon, you're just met with this like perspective and this awe. And I think that just perspective and faith and the spiritual side, I think that's like a really important perspective to have as you are driving and chasing your goals, which I know a lot of people that are listening to this are very visionary. They're very goal oriented. So that's just one thing that kind of came up for me when you asked me that question.
Yeah, well, and just the faith of trusting whatever's going to come your way is meant to be.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Like, what is that? How do you connect to that for your own life?
Yeah. So I believe that I was created by God with a purpose and with a plan for my life. And so the more that I've gotten closer to him, the more that I trust that everything that comes into my life is actually going to get me closer to the person that he wants me to become and his plan for me. And a lot of times I don't understand it. Sometimes it's painful, like my own mental health journey, but I trust it. And having that perspective is actually the thing that has given me the peace and the resilience to push through and do hard things and to do it in a way that is aligned, because that's the foundation for everything. That's the foundation for my whole life.
Yeah, I so resonate with, for me, it's like thinking about it as like the universe, like something bigger,
Yeah.
and being able to connect to that. It's such a powerful point that it does put things in perspective. You actually can realize the problems are smaller than you may be imagining, because it can
Yeah.
feel like all consuming in your mind. And you
Yes.
can actually wrap your arms around that and be able to not stay stuck and actually can move forward.
Yeah.
Else
No, that
you got something else coming up?
no, I'm just saying like that's why I said perspective. And I
Yeah.
said it in that way because when you believe in something that's bigger than you, when you have that perspective on your life, it changes the way that you react to things, like to adversity, like quote unquote. Because yes, there are things that are hard, but if you really do believe in trust in that perspective, in a higher power, then it makes things a lot more manageable and a lot more enjoyable.
Mario, I appreciate you and all the wisdom you shared and insights. I know will absolutely resonate with the person that's listening to this. For people that want to learn more about your work, how do they find you?
Yeah, well, first, I just want to say thank you so much, RD, for having me on here, man. Like every time that we've connected, I just feel more energized after we connect. And like I really do mean what I said at the beginning. Like I really admire what you're doing. I admire the way that you're showing up. And I just want to encourage you to keep going, because there's so many people that are struggling right now with burnout, with uncertainty of as they're navigating their journey and their path, and you're making a difference. So you're the man, dude. Keep going.
Appreciate that.
But for anybody that wants to stay connected with me, I post on Instagram. It's just Mario.Minnaert. We'll probably link that or something. I also have a podcast where I talk about kind of mindset principles and performance habits and this perspective. It's just the Mario Minnaert podcast. And yeah, like really excited. If anybody has anything that stood out and resonated, like send me a DM or send RD a DM so we can kind of hear like what resonated.
Yeah, hell yeah. And definitely put the links there for sure. I'll get those set up. So appreciate you, Mario. Thank you.
Awesome. You're the man.